Mia had ignored her mother's calls for days, weeks, and even months. Each time her phone rang, she felt a pang of guilt but quickly silenced it. She couldn't bring herself to answer, not after their last argument. The words exchanged had cut deep, leaving wounds that hadn't healed. Mia's mother had always been her rock, but now, that rock felt like a mountain she couldn't climb. The notifications piled up, each one a reminder of the distance growing between them. For weeks Mia had avoided any form of contact. The rift between them was born of old arguments and unspoken words, a chasm that seemed impossible to bridge. She replayed their last conversation in her mind, the harsh words, the tears, the silence that followed. It was a tense family dinner that had spiraled out of control, leaving both of them hurt and angry. Mia often found herself staring out the window, lost in thought, wondering if things could ever go back to the way they were. She told herself she needed space. That time apart would help them both cool down. She spent her days walking alone in the park, trying to clear her mind, and sitting in coffee shops, lost in her thoughts. But the more time passed, the more she realized that space wasn't the answer. The loneliness was suffocating, and the silence between them grew louder with each passing day. She missed her mother's voice, her laughter, her advice, but pride kept her from reaching out. Deep down, she knew it was pride that kept her from picking up the phone. She was worried about what her mother would say, how she would react. The thought of facing her mother's disappointment was unbearable. At night, she lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, her mind racing with thoughts of regret. She cried alone in her room, the weight of her decision pressing down on her. Something was wrong. She could feel it in her bones. The regret was unbearable, the silence, deafening. One day she found a handwritten letter on her table. It was from her mother. With trembling hands she opened it and began to read. "If you're reading this, I've gone away for a while. I needed some time to think, to clear my head. I hope you'll understand someday. I love you always." The words hit her like a ton of bricks. Her mother had left and she hadn't even noticed. The realization was a punch to the gut, leaving her breathless and filled with a sense of urgency. Tears streamed down her face as she clutched the letter to her chest. She remembered the times they had hugged, the warmth and comfort of her mother's embrace. She had taken it all for granted and now, it felt like it was slipping away. The letter was a wake-up call, a reminder of what truly mattered. She needed to make things right, to bridge the gap that had grown between them. But how? The fear of rejection loomed large, but the thought of losing her mother forever was even more terrifying. As she sat there, lost in her thoughts, her phone buzzed. It was a voicemail from her mother. With a shaky hand, she pressed play. "Mia, I just wanted to say I'm proud of you. I know things have been tough, but I believe in you. Call me when you're ready. I'll always be here." Her mother's voice was warm and reassuring, a stark contrast to the cold silence that had filled their lives. The message was a lifeline, a chance to mend what was broken. Mia stared at her phone, her heart pounding. The voicemail notification was a beacon of hope, a sign that it wasn't too late. She took a deep breath, feeling a sense of determination wash over her. She needed to make the call, to take the first step towards reconciliation. Her mother had extended an olive branch, and it was up to her to accept it. The fear and pride that had held her back began to melt away, replaced by a newfound resolve. With a determined look, she dialed her mother's number. The phone rang, and with each ring, her anxiety grew. But then, she heard her mother's voice on the other end, filled with love and relief. They talked for hours, sharing their feelings, their regrets, and their hopes for the future. It was a conversation that changed everything. Sometimes, it's not too late to make things right. The bond between a mother and daughter is strong, and with a little effort, it can be mended. Mia knew that now, and she was ready to rebuild what they had lost.